On today's Locked On Twins, we are going to get right back to it with the storylines that we are trying to see figured out here as Grapefruit League play begins at the end of the week. This is Locked On Twins.
You are Locked On Twins, your daily Minnesota Twins podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Good morning in the news this morning. Good morning. Hello again and welcome back to Locked On Twins. I'm your host, Brandon Morning. You can unfollow me on Twitter at Brandon_WARNE. Thanks for making Locked On Twins your first listen every day. And I am joined, as I almost always am, by Dave Brown at Answer Dave Brown on the X Twitter machine. How are we doing, Dave?
We're doing great, Brandon. My plica is good. Or my plica, and it just everything flows from that.
Honestly, it does. I think once that feels good, you're basically on cloud nine, as we've found that Byron Buxton is. And I don't know if you saw, but the first contact from Byron Buxton this spring absolutely pasted a ball off the fence against Bailey Ober. So Bailey Ober, not a bad pitcher. So I felt the need to tweet, they are so back, you guys, because, hey, as much as we don't know what Byron Buxton has to offer defensively or even offensively this year, it's hard not to be encouraged by the early returns, wouldn't you say?
I like it when people get overly enthusiastic about a double during live batting practice and spring training. It just means the baseball season is here. I think we all, well, maybe we don't all know, but I think we all know that it's too early to draw too many conclusions. But let's just get excited in the moment, and that's all we really have. Life is a bunch of moments.
Did you have a $5 bet on Byron Buxton doing that on FanDuel? Because if you did, you would get $150 in bonus bets. I'm not sure that they do that for spring training live batting practice, but today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. You can make every moment more as a new customer by joining today, and you get $150 in bonus bets if your first bet of $5 or more wins. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. And again, too, thank you for making Locked On Twins your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube. If you're watching on YouTube, try wave to the camera here. But hey, thanks for hanging out with us. We very much appreciate it, except for that one guy that said this podcast sucks in the comments today, but that no longer exists. So if you don't like it, sorry. But again, thank you so much for hanging out with us. We would love to have you subscribe, click the thumbs up, or just leave a thumbs up in the comments. Any comment is great for us. We love to hear from the listeners, at least as long as you're not a jerk. Locked On, by the way, has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on the YouTubes. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with local experts of Locked On, like Dave Brown and myself, plus our national shows covering every league. Go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and subscribe to the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel. Dave, what did you think of the ground we covered in the first part of Twins storylines to keep an eye on as the team gets ready for Grapefruit League play here this weekend?
I think we covered ground like Byron Buxton's going to cover it in center field this year. I thought it was fantastic. But there's, as you kind of hinted, there's actually lots of storylines, and I don't even know if we, between the two of us, even if we're that comprehensive, I mean, we could keep going with this. But there's always more. There's always more to talk about, especially in the early days of spring training. So I think we did a great bang-up job for the first one. And I don't know what that guy is talking about with that comment about the show. It's not true. The show does not suck.
Reminds me of George Bluth Sr., where he says to Buster, "You were just a turd out there." That's the kind of comments we get sometimes. But hey, a listener is a listener all the same, and we thank you for that. I saw a couple things today. Chris Paddack is going to start the opener, not Grapefruit League, but spring training opener against the University of Minnesota. Nothing like getting back on the horse right away, even if you're going to be facing a middling team from the Big Ten. It'll be fun to see how he looks, how sharp he is, because he is a pretty big pivot point for this rotation. And one more thing, and then I'll let you kind of give your thoughts. But I saw Jorge Polanco in Seattle Mariners duds today taking batting practice, and it didn't look right. Again, I get it's the business of baseball, and it's just the way it goes, but a little unsettling, to say the least.
Well, Jorge was in the Twins organization for, I believe, 34 years. So it's really difficult for fans to get their head around not having him there. And he's still just like 30 years old. I don't know how. I know the math doesn't add up there, but it is unsettling. It's the when you care so much about a team, that's the downside of making moves. It's someone has to go, and it's someone you're used to having around. So it's a little bit of an unsettling thing. But he's in a good spot. They found a good family farm for him, and he's where he is going to do a lot of good, and the Twins are okay too. So it's okay.
Out there chasing the wildlife and having the time of his life. It should be good. Thoughts on Paddack? Because again, he's going to be a linchpin for this rotation. And even though again, it'll only be against guys who are in their early 20s, late teens, it should be fun. By the way, Jorge Polanco was signed by the Twins when I was still in college. So he has been in the organization, or had been in the organization, a while. So yeah, it is a little hard to see him somewhere else. But anyway, back to Paddack.
And that's not a coincidence, too. I think you being in college is one of the reasons why they signed him. I don't know. It doesn't have anything to do with it. But
I guess I just finished too. A lot of people go to college for 7 years.
Right. 7 years of college down the drain. I think didn't John Belushi say that? Something like that.
Called doctors, Tommy Boy.
Oh, right. Of course.
Yeah, either way. I mean, Chris Farley wanted to be Belushi, so I think it's all one and the same. But anyway, getting waylaid a little bit here.
Back to Chris Paddack. Is that what you're saying?
Paddack, that's going to be my fantasy baseball name this year.
There's a lot of, there are a few guys in the rotation and on the staff who there are questions about. No more mysterious really than Paddack. We're kind of interested. Well, what's Joe Ryan? How's he going to take that next step? What's DeSclafani's deal? And Paddack, they're kind of counting on him here for no restrictions on the innings, and he's never really piled up a lot of innings. And it's going to be fun to see, hopefully, to see exactly what the Twins have. And I don't know. I know he's been working on other pitches, and are we going to see that against the Gophers? Not sure. I'm just glad that Big Ten teams still have baseball teams. Sometimes they go away and the programs end, and we have to go fund me to get them back. So I like that angle too. So I'm interested to see just how he does, and hopefully he gets off to a clean start. Clean is a good word, I think.
Have you ever heard what happens if you apply for a GoFundMe and it gets rejected?
What happens?
They tell you to go fund yourself. Anyway, Big Ten programs folding. Actually, a guy from my high school committed to play baseball at Wisconsin, and then the program folded back in 87 or 88 or something like that. It's not, what's that?
That is obscene. And it's not because of, I was going to say Rule 20, but that's not what it is. Title 19, Title 7.
Title 9.
Title 9. I think that is a cop-out, and I don't believe in it. So it's not because women play sports too.
No, it's not.
But anyway, that doesn't really have anything to do with Paddack, because the Gophers are solvent as far as we know, as far as they know. But yeah, that's going to be interesting, and I want to see, is Buxton going to – Buxton's not playing in that game, is he?
I doubt it. It'll probably be guys like Alex Isola behind the plate, and maybe you see Willie Castro, someone like that.
Okay.
By the way, alumni of the Wisconsin club team, Jack Moore, former Fangraphs writer, was on.
I've met Jack. I've actually met. That's a person from Twitter that I've met in person.
I can go one better. I went to a Timberwolves game with him.
Oh, you a whole game?
Super dude. Yeah, love that guy.
Very much. Yeah, I did a fantasy draft with him once in Chicago. Oh, this is a while ago, maybe 2010, 2011, something like that. And I wish him well. He's a funny guy, and he's a good baseball man.
I think he's a professional video game player now, actually. But
He does talk about it a lot. He might very well be. I don't know. I don't know how you make a living at that, but I don't know how you make a living as a sports writer either. So we share that in common.
true. Well, let's take a second. We'll have a word from our friends at eBay Motors, and then when we come back, we will dive in headlong, like we're sliding into home plate with our cleats up to talk about Kyle Farmer, Louis Varland, Matt Wallner, and just about anybody else under the sun. But again, first, a word from eBay Motors. eBay Motors wants you to know that passion, drive, and patience are what bring home the winning trophy and also what keep your ride alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance, from superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and about a billion things more. Slight exaggeration, but not really. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. They actually have, Dave Brown, 122 million plus parts for your number one ride, so you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. So my Chevy Colorado, Dave, I think you have a fully loaded Toyota Tercel?
How did you know that? That's creepy.
Market research, my friend. Market research. No, I'm just channeling my inner Jack Donaghy there. I'm just messing with you. But with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash, because with all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home that win. So keep your ride alive with ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only, restrictions apply, including that eBay's Guaranteed Fit is only available to U.S. customers. But again, ebaymotors.com is the place to go for all your auto parts needs. At least I would say if you can't get to Bradenton to get auto parts, eBay Motors is definitely the place to go. We talked about that on the most recent episode where the Pirates' home stadium during spring training is in an area that's kind of industrial, and I think there's a bunch of car part places near there. But
it comes in handy for the bullpen car if it breaks down. All you got to do is go next door and also know an auto mechanic, and you're fine.
Yeah, well, and we need to. The bullpen car is coming back, and I thought it was cart at first, but it is bullpen car. Bringing those back. Glenn Perkins, former Twin and noted Minnesota resident, and actually, quite frankly, a pretty good broadcaster now that he's got his legs under him, was a big enthusiast of that. Now, his career has been put out to pasture, and so his enthusiasm for that has waned, but the spirit lives on through Twins fans who would love to see, Joan Duran ride through on a golf cart with a Twins helmet on it or something.
I remember Perkins's push for the bullpen car, and I know history when they tell the story of it, of the Renaissance, the revitalization. It will look upon him fondly.
Yeah, for sure. Let's talk about Matt Wallner. The question, or rather the storyline that actually you submitted was, will Matt Wallner emerge as an everyday effective outfielder? And so last year, fans got the perception that I was anti Matt Wallner, which couldn't be further from the truth. It was more along the lines of temper your enthusiasm because his skill set is awfully similar to Joey Gallo. And it wasn't so much that Twins fans wanted Matt Wallner up, but they were willing and ready to DFA Max Kepler to do it. And Max Kepler, same level of tenure as Jorge Polanco, and fans were ready to just kind of throw him to the wolves. And boy, that would have looked stupid if he would have signed with, let's say, the Yankees and had that second half that he had, or anywhere else for that matter. But Wallner came up. He did what he does, which is take some walks and hit for some power. And he's fairly mobile for his size. He's got a good arm. And he's got to ward off a few different guys, whether it's if they sign another guy, Trevor Larnach, who seems to be the last man out in this outfield, and then a few prospects besides. It's going to be interesting, but I am mostly optimistic. Again, the strikeouts could be problematic, but left on left, he's shown some pop. I believe in the futures game, he crushed an absolute bomb left on left. So he's not completely helpless against southpaws, which is a big thing for left-handed hitters. In general, though, yeah, I would say arrow is trending up for him. I think he'll have a nice season. I'm just thinking though, it's hard for him to maintain the expectations because he's a Minnesota boy, and we kind of all saw how that worked out for Joe Mauer.
I'm hopeful for him. We kind of mentioned a little bit yesterday uh, who among the Twins got lots of good production from rookies and near rookies
Yep.
last year, and who might be in line for some regression. And I don't know that Wallner, coming off a season where he was basically like 40% above league average as a producer offensively, that seems very ambitious. I don't think anybody's expecting it, but also there could be some adjustments in mind. He's turned 26. That's good and bad.
He kind of is who he is.
Right. I'm reserving judgment on him. I'm not 100% sold. I think that's why it would have been nice to add another bigger offensive piece than apparently they're going to. They've added some good complementary players around the diamond, but I also would be keeping an eye on the outfield prospects to see the younger ones to see how they do in case there's a learning curve here in his second, not full season, but second half season or whatever it is, the beginning of the season is. So yeah. I'm optimistic, but obviously I've got some misgivings.
I wouldn't be opposed to the idea that Emmanuel Rodriguez is on the fast track just because, you start burning up years in the organization, then decision time comes. So even though hasn't played advanced levels of the minor leagues, once you're on the 40, the thing just kind of speeds up on you. It's happened with Jorge Polanco, where I want to say he came up in 2014. He was a young kid, but he was on the 40 and they needed an infielder. So he came up in Texas. I think he played some third base. I think he had a triple down the right field line where it was kind of like, hey, this guy can really play. And so it wouldn't be shocking if it came down to it where he just kind of gets force fed to the big leagues. So he's one I'm keeping an eye on. Austin Martin is another who, is kind of mixed and matched between the outfield and the infield. Not sure he's got a specific singular defensive home, but there are plenty of valuable players in the league right now who, or in recent years, that didn't have a single defensive home. For instance, when Whit Merrifield was at his best, if you were to make him an all-star, what position would it have been at? Or Ben Zobrist, or handful of guys. So not being chained to one spot certainly doesn't hurt you. It can definitely help you. Let's see. Let's do this one. Is Alex Kirilloff ready to take off? And another submission from you, and I think it's kind of not necessarily tied into Matt Wallner, but it's another left-handed hitter who still has something to prove. Obviously, there's some draft capital there, although I believe Kirilloff was the last player that the previous regime picked in the first round.
Just as long as he's not the last player to report to spring training.
Yeah, and he apparently wasn't. So, and Carlos Santana hit a double today. I figure if he'd have showed up early, it would have been a triple at least. So, I think the writing might be on the wall. Does he really even want to be there? And by the way, another meme going around Twins Twitter right now is Cody Bellinger signing with the team 3 years with opt-outs after each year. Just a running meme. Did you see it?
I suggested opt-outs on the hour. Just, midnight, 2 a.m., 4 a.m.
It's like the 24/7 title on pro wrestling where you can defend it anywhere, anytime, and they do it like in the airport and stuff. It's kind of fun.
The airport.
Yeah, so anyway, Alex Kirilloff, it all hinges on the wrist for me. I mean, if his wrist is healthy, and they give him first base full time, which looks to be the case, or at least full time for as often as he plays, it'll be curious because he did have a play against the Blue Jays, or was it against the Astros? It was in October for sure, where I think it was the Astros because he kind of flubbed it and it ended up snowballing a little bit, and then he was injured, and I think that's what actually got Buxton on the postseason roster. Was he was actually added after that, but put AK
yes.
Yeah, put AK at first base. Let him get comfortable, let him play against righties. I don't know. I'm still a buyer. It's not like he's going to be the second coming of Joey Votto, but he's going to drive the ball to the gaps. Could be a 40 double, 20 homer guy if things go right with a decent on base percentage. I'm still in. I don't know about takeoff, but if he is at his best, I see like a 115, 120 OPS plus / weighted runs created plus, whatever your preferred flavor is.
I think he's a guy, first off, that we can measure success this year in how much he's able to play.
Yeah.
I think that's the key. Is his wrist healthy? Is it protected from this odd condition that he has from happening again or recurring or whatever? If he can get into 125 games, it's a successful season because that means he's probably producing and he's probably healthy. And
but he's also probably been shielded from tough lefties too, which is only going to help his stat line.
Yes. He doesn't have to deal with that because Carlos Santana can hit right-handed and is, at least at the moment, better at first base, even at 37 or whatever he is. So it's a very functional addition that Santana. And it's a buffer too. But with any number of possibilities on the spectrum here, if Wallner doesn't work out, if Santana really works out, Kirilloff could go to left field, or they could bring up one of the really smaller kids from the minors. So there's lots of, you sort of have to prepare yourself for some different possible outcomes here. But I think if healthy, Kirilloff is going to be an effective guy that's going to make the first base depth with the Twins better than it was a year ago.
Yeah, I tend to agree with that. Let's take a quick second, give some love to our friends at FanDuel. When we come back, we have a handful more questions, and who knows, maybe we'll even have a part 3 for the Twins and storylines. But again, a word from FanDuel. And you can get buckets with your first bet on FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. Now, we are in the midst of All-Star weekend / week, so games firing up again here in a couple days. But all the more time to do your research, because right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. So $150 if your first bet wins. There's all kinds of options, whether you want to do quick bets, live same-game parlays, exclusive props, you name it, everything under the sun, they have it. And again, $150 if your first bet of $5 or more wins. So visit FanDuel.com/locked-on and shoot your shot. $150. I mean, it's the biggest no-brainer in history. You should check it out right away. As soon as you're done listening to us, you should run over there and see what your options are, because FanDuel is an official sportsbook partner of the NBA. I see you on mute there, Dave Brown, or you were on mute, but you're back. Love to see that. Always fun.
The cough will never truly end.
You can't stop it.
I'm back talking so you can hear me.
Right. Yeah, you can't stop it. You can only hope to contain it. And so far, you've done a nice job. Who are we sleeping on too much, Dave Brown? Because you talked about first base, and one guy that they invited to spring training who had at least a semi-interesting run in the Arizona Fall League is Aaron Sabato. Beefy first baseman, right-handed swinger, who, he's really one decent to good season from being on the radar, at least as an option at DH, as an option at first base. Right now, for DH, assuming Byron Buxton continues to be healthy, is going to be kind of a rotating, revolving door of a bunch of guys, at least it seems so far. So I think there's an opportunity there, and I think we could be sleeping on him. I also think we're sleeping on Trevor Larnach, who, while he hasn't been great, he's had moments where, if he gets into counts with fastballs, he can drive the crap out of the ball. Breaking ball is a little different. And then Jose Miranda. I mean, literally, Roster Resource, last I checked, had him penciled in on the bench. Not sure how that works because his positional flexibility is kind of first base, third base. But this is a guy who a year ago they had high expectations for. He had a phenomenal season in the minors the year before that. Those are kind of my three guys where it's like Sabato's probably third on that list, but I brought him up because we haven't talked about him really at all on the show since you joined. But I think Miranda's number one for me because, well, they seem stocked at third base and at first base. There's DH opportunities. And again, you never know what happens. There's guys get injured. There's guys who don't play like you would hope. Carlos Santana is not exactly young. So sometimes Father Time just steps in and says, that's it. So I'm enthused about the chance of Jose Miranda not only having a decent season, but really sneaking up on people, whether it be real life baseball or fantasy baseball.
Well, and Miranda possesses that thing that the Twins still need, and that's right-handed pop.
Yep.
And the position doesn't necessarily work out if Royce Lewis is playing every day, and now that they have Kirilloff and Santana at first base. But like you said, there is still designated hitter. I don't know if he's going to have to, use some ramping up time down at Minneapolis or at St. Paul. Twins in Minneapolis, St. Paul and St. Paul.
The other city, yeah, the
other across the river. Sort of like with Varland, could he use a little time there to get going?
Sure.
But he's the kind of depth that if bad things happen, knock on wood, and someone's out for a month or whatever.
In baseball, bad things do happen.
Yes, it happens all the time.
Yep.
I think this is one of the reasons why I'm so optimistic about the Twins, because they have players like this kind of standing by that maybe you don't necessarily take from opening day, or maybe you do. I don't know. It depends on how the roster shakes out. But you have them in the organization, and are all the rookies who hit last year, are they all going to go 35-40% above league average? Probably not. Right. But if one or two of them fail, there are options for someone to step in, and we're not talking about people who are like really old and decrepit. They're young, energetic players that have produced sometimes in the major leagues before. I think that's that is another reason to be optimistic about the Twins. People like Miranda, even if he's not helping them from opening day.
He's 25 too. Like, it's not as though
right
the luster is completely off here. I'm looking to see, defensively, he played 250 games in the minors at third base and 34 at shortstop. Obviously not an option, but 168 games at second base. I'm not saying that's necessarily an option, but again, I mean, don't close the door. If they get him in there at the pivot and he is an option against righties, there's Kyle Farmer besides. Donovan Solano no longer in the picture, at least for now. I don't know. I mean, I think they could find opportunities. Again, I'm not saying they'll use him at second base, but he played almost 1,400 defensive innings at second base. They know within some range of yes, he can, no, he cannot hang at second base in a pinch. And they stomached Edouard Julien at second base, which was a really rough baptism by fire to start. But then he came into his own quite nicely.
Well, when you see things like, a guy playing shortstop at second base in the minors and putting in significant innings, it doesn't tell you that he could handle that in the majors necessarily. But what it does tell you is you've got a guy with some athleticism, some agility, some quickness that, like you say, in a pinch, makes you a little more viable for the roster because of the possibilities that it would give Rocco. And the possibility of subbing for somebody for a couple of weeks at a time if they went on the injured list. So that's the kind of thing, you can look at their minor league statistics on defense and say, well, that's not really going to translate every day to the majors, but you might not need them to play every day. And It's just, that's another reason to like having these guys in your corner, because you are not, as devastating and as unhappy as everybody would be if one of the starting players got hurt. The Twins have options in case that happens, and Miranda is another reason to be excited for that reason. I said reason many times, but you get it.
Right. I think this is the one we'll probably wrap on because we're obviously pushing up against the time limit. How much better will the Twins be if they get decent seasons from both of their catchers? Now, The Twins probably had the best luck from catcher standpoint of health last year. I believe only the two guys, Ryan Jeffers and Christian Vasquez, actually played catcher for them. As far as production, so if you were to look at Fangraphs WAR, 3.6 combined between the two, 100 weighted runs created plus. So they were ninth in offense. Defensive value, they were 20 runs, which is ninth. What did I say, WAR? Ninth. Seems to be a recurring theme of ninth, and ninth. But Christian Vasquez goes to Driveline. He loses some weight. At the very least, he's motivated to kick some hind end this year. I think he was motivated by not playing in the playoffs last year. This is a guy who caught a fair amount for 2 World Series winning teams. So it probably seems a little more to not play in October. And I'm a big Ryan Jeffers guy. So keeping both of those guys fresh and healthy well into the season and into October, it can only be helpful and it can only be good. And so we'll see how it goes. But I like your line of thinking there of how much better they can be behind the plate if things come together for them.
If Vasquez can jumpstart his bat a little bit to where it was before.
2019 style.
Yes. And it doesn't even have to be that great. But if he can just kind of recapture that a little bit, and maybe sometimes, like you said, he didn't get to play in the playoffs. It bugged him, maybe motivated him, re-energized him, whatever. Then that's going to, those off days, you don't have to worry as much about not having Jeffers in the lineup if this guy's going okay and being a contributor.
And it's not like he hasn't done that in the past. Well, Dave Brown, we're up against the time limit as we always are. Thanks everyone, though, for checking out Locked On Twins. We'll be back tomorrow and we'll see ya tomorrow night.